Hello everyone. Today we have dive into the session about authentication and sessions in web apps. By the end, you will know what the authentication is and how session works and how they differ. What is authentication? Authentication is a process of checking if someone is really who they are. It usually involves using a username and password or other methods like OTP or fingerprint. If the check is correct, the person is allowed to access the system or app. For example, you unlock your phone using a fingerprint, right? So phone checks your fingerprint and then opens a data in your phone. Steps of authentication. Firstly, we have credential submission. This is where user provide their login details like username and password to start the authentication process. And next is verification. The system checks those credentials against the stored data to confirm if the user identity is valid or not. And finally, we have access grant. Once the credentials are usually and are successfully verified, the user is allowed access to their authorized resources and such as their account or dashboard. Understanding the authentication steps. It is an important step to keep our account and data safe. For example, when we log into Instagram or Gmail, we type our username and password. So that's the authentication process. The system checks if those details are correct before letting us in. Sometimes it also asks for an OTP or a fingerprint. That's an extra layer of checking to make sure it's really us. So authentication helps protects our personal information and stop others from accessing our accounts without permission. What is sessions? A session is like a short temporary connection between you and a website or app. It starts right after you log in. That's after the authentication step, and it keeps track of what you are doing until you log out or close the site. For example, when you log in into Amazon site and add items in your cart, the website remembers your actions through a session. Even if you move to another page, your cart item stayed saved because the session is still active. Each session has a unique ID, which helps the server knows using the system. So a session helps maintain your activity and keep your interaction smooth while you are logged in. Understanding the sessions process. After we log into a website or an app, a session starts. The session helps the system remember who, where, and what we are doing until we log out. For example, when you log in into online classes or attend a meeting on Zoom or Google Meet, we stay connected for some time. That's a session. The session continues while we are in the class and it ends when we leave the meeting. So, a session helps us stay connected and active in the system without logging in again and again. And last, the difference between authentication and sessions. And coming to authentication, it is the process of checking who you are. And it happens when you logged in using username and password. And coming to session, it starts after authentication. Once you are logged in. And it helps the system remember you while you are using it to keep you connected and track your activity until you log out. Now coming to the code. Coming to .env file. The .env file stores secret details like database, link, port and security keys. It helps keep our project safe. So if you move the project to another computer, you can change .env. No need to change code. Coming to package.json. Package.json keeps a list of all the libraries we need so we can easily install them using npm install. It lets node.js when libraries to install. For example, Express uses to build the backend server. Mongoose uses to connect MongoDB. .env to load .env file. JWT to handle authentication. And coming to server.js. And server.js is the heart of the backend. It connects to the database and listens for front-end requests. When a user clicks login on the frontend, a request goes to the server. This server calls the controller to check user data to send response back and import Express and other modules connect to MongoDB using configuration db.js. And coming to configuration db.js to import Mongos and use the link from .env Mongo URL to connect to your database. db.js connect our project to MongoDB so we can store user and leave data. And coming to controllers, user controller.js. In controller.js, register user, login user, fetch user details. It receives front-end request, perform actions, checking password or saving user data, and send a replies back. User controller JS handles what happens when a user logins or registers. It controls the logic. And coming to middleware, auth middleware.js. Before allowing access to certain pages like profile or leave requests, the file check the JWT token. If valid, user is allowed. If invalid, access denied. Auth middleware checks if a user is logged in using tokens. It keeps our backend secure. Coming to models, user.js. For example, name is equal to Pooja and email, some email, password and role. User.js tells MongoDB what each user data look like name, password and role, etc. And node modules. This vault is automatically created when you run npm install. It contains all the downloaded libraries required by your project. So node modules contain all the library code that our backend needs to run. So this is the backend. So this is the backend. How backend works. User does something on frontend like login. Frontend sends request to server.js and it sends to user controller.js. User.js model to check or save data into MongoDB. And finally, backend sends response back into frontend. Our backend uses Express and MongoDB. The frontend sends a request to the server. It checks the data and connection with MongoDB and sends the response back. So this is the authentication and sessions. So authentication is all about checking who you are and session is after the processing of authentication. So thank you.